السلام عليكم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي وبعد. Does anybody know who this man is? Jack Ma. Net worth $33.8 billion. Now, this picture actually is copyrighted, and so that's why I had to give credit to the person that took the film, that took the picture. If I wanted to purchase one, it was $500. So I don't have that net worth, so I'm giving credit to the person. Now, he was being interviewed at the World Economic Forum about the failures that he's encountered in his life. And he started talking. So he said that when he was in primary school, there's a test to pass out of it. He failed it twice. When he was in middle school, there's a test to pass out of it. He failed it 3 times. He applied to 3 universities, got rejected. Applied to Harvard 10 times, got rejected 10 times. When he was looking for work, the police force was recruiting. They interviewed 5 people. 4 people got the job. 1 of them didn't. He was the one that didn't get the job. When KFC came to China, they opened up in China, 24 people interviewed. 23 people got the job. He was the 1 person that didn't get the job. He got rejected from over 30 jobs. Yet, through all those failures, right now, if we were to look at him as a success, as a businessman, we would say he is at the top. He's reached the pinnacle. But there was a whole lot that went into it, a whole lot of struggle before he got there. Let's look at some other quote-unquote failures. Michael Jordan, 2nd greatest basketball player of all time. Behind Kobe Bryant. Okay, so LeBron, what are we talking? Michael Jordan. Thank you. Michael Jordan was cut from his varsity team as a sophomore. And he used that as motivation. He came back his junior year and went on to create this cultural phenomenon. And who would have expected that somebody would reach that level of height or those heights when halfway through high school they couldn't even be the best player in their own high school? Let's take a look at another example. Your girl, Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey was fired early on in her career as a reporter because she was too emotionally invested in her subject, in her people that she was interviewing. She grew up in crushing poverty. But through all those failures, look what we have now. Now today she's a billionaire, influences I don't know how many people, and please don't tell me Oprah 2020. That's lame. Okay, let's take a look at another example. This person, we'll call her, was an author. So she had a little idea, and she wrote it. She was really excited about it. She submitted it to 12 different publishing companies and was rejected 12 times. Also during this time, she is going through a painful divorce and living off government subsidies. So the 13th publisher, even they didn't really like it, but their little daughter liked it. And so that kind of gave her in, and she wrote. Now, you may have heard of the books that she's written. They're called Harry Potter. And she is the first person who's ever become a billionaire off of writing a book. Now, all of these examples are of people, whether it was a businessman or an entertainer or an athlete or an author, they all are at the top of their professions. And we would say it is greatness, at least from a dunya perspective. It is greatness. But there was so much failure, there was so much imperfection that happened before that. So why is it when we hear these stories we get all excited, but when it comes to what really matters, when it comes to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not the same level of excitement. So let's look now from a more kind of religious perspective. And one of the reasons why we don't get as excited from the religious perspective is because we don't really understand what the reality of life is in the first place. We want life to be all rosy and smooth. Allah said, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. Mankind was created in turmoil. Mankind was created in difficulty, in stress, in toil. It's going to be a roller coaster ride. It's not going to be smooth. And that's, when it comes to those tests that come to us, we're quick to just kind of give up on them. Why is Allah doing this to me? Why does it have to happen to me? Well, if we understood that it was going to happen, then we would understand. Before we go into college or before we start a business, we know it's going to be hard. That's why we keep persevering. If we didn't know that, perhaps we would quit. So in the test of life, we have to understand what the reality is. Let's take another verse, if the computer works. Allah says, وَلِكُلٍّ دَرَجَاتٍ مِّمَّا عَمِلُوا وَمَا رَبُّكَ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا يَعْمَلُونَ. Everybody has levels based off what they have done. And this is a principle that Allah mentions in the Quran, that we were created in different levels. Why do I mention that? Because a lot of times we'll look at other people and we think we are failures because we have not accomplished what they have accomplished. Even though there's never going to be universal everything. Universal income, universal housing, we're going to live in the same size house and all drive the same cars. It's never going to happen. Never happened in the history of humanity. That doesn't mean that what I've achieved is a failure. People are different. People are different in levels of knowledge. People are different in their beauty. People are different in their economic status. Whatever the case may be, there's always going to be different levels. Now, this is not to downplay injustice or anything like that, but this is the reality of life. In fact, Allah even said that He created levels so that people will actually serve others. Sukhriya. So people will work. Everybody doesn't get to be the CEO. Everybody doesn't get to be the president. Everybody doesn't get to be the VP. That's only a limited number of people. And then the other people work under. It's all about levels. That doesn't mean that the person here is somehow less than anybody above them. So this is an important principle to keep in mind. Let's take a look at one of the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, "By him in whose hands my soul is, if you did not sin, Allah would replace you with people who would sin. And they would seek forgiveness from Allah and He would forgive them," in Sahih Muslim. This means that the default is that we're going to fail as human beings in some capacity. That doesn't mean that our iman is supposed to crash. That doesn't mean that we lose our faith because of a little hiccup. But it's going to happen. And when we turn back to Allah, that's what Allah wants from us. He doesn't want us to just, we do the best we can, but He didn't create us, I should say. He didn't create us to just go and be perfect and never mess up. If that was the case, He would have replaced us. So this is a very profound hadith. Let's look at an example in Islamic history at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Let me give a little background about this. The Prophet ﷺ and his companions in the 6th year of Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ had a dream that they were making Umrah. Okay, so they were going and doing the Umrah. They hadn't been back for a long time. They were out of Mecca. They were in Medina now. They missed making the pilgrimage. So all the Sahaba are excited and the majority of them go with the Prophet ﷺ. However, they are prevented from actually making the Umrah. And there's a treaty which is laid out, which is called the Sulh of Hudaybiyah. And that treaty has conditions. And those conditions, when we look at them initially, and not just us, the Sahaba, who had the highest iman of anyone, they looked at it as a failure. Omar radiallahu an was very disappointed when he saw the conditions that were being agreed upon, as if it was a loss. And when the Prophet ﷺ, imagine they're all prepared and they go this long distance. When they got there and they were told that they cannot make the Umrah, and he told them to get up now and get out of the ihram and shave your head before actually making the Umrah, they were actually in a daze. These are the companions who would give their life for the Prophet ﷺ. They were in a daze. And so the Prophet ﷺ retreated to his tent, and Salama, his wife, told him that, these are the people that they're not disobeying you. It's very difficult right now because it seems like a defeat. So you go out to the Prophet ﷺ, and then he went out and then he shaved and then they followed suit. Okay, this is like a super paraphrased version. But the point is that people were thinking this is a failure. So why did they think it was a failure? Okay, here was a condition, there's going to be peace for 10 years. Okay, that sounds like a good start. Here's another condition. Whoever comes to the Muslims from Mecca must be returned, but not vice versa. Okay, so let me get this straight. If I'm in Mecca and I'm a Muslim and I go to Medina, where it's the city of the Prophet ﷺ, and I went without permission, I can't stay there. I have to be returned. But if a Muslim from Medina goes to Mecca, they're not returned. That seems very one-sided, does it not? Doesn't make any sense. But that was what was written and agreed upon. Hajj will be performed the following year. Now wait a second, we just took this long journey. When you go on a plane, it's difficult enough. We just took this long journey on foot and riding on camels. And the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ actually changed into ihram earlier because they wanted to show that they were simply coming to make the Umrah and for no other reason. So it was even more. They were in this state of ihram for even longer maybe than normal. And here they are, they're being told, you're right here, but you can't go. Seems totally unfair. What else? So was this a failure? Computer's going a little crazy. Was it a failure? The answer is no. Why? Upon further examination. Because of the 10-year peace, the Muslims were able to mix with non-Muslims. And they were able to see the beauty of Islam. And we saw massive conversion and acceptance of Islam. That's not a failure. The 10-year peace period gave time to form alliances and take care of other business, which people couldn't take care of, like the Battle of Khaybar. It needed to be taken care of. So now, with the 10-year peace accord, it was taken care of. They had a written guarantee of Umrah the next year, so it was definitely going to happen. Nobody said they were going to make Umrah this year. And when Omar radiallahu anhu asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, you said we were going to make Umrah, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would never be someone who didn't tell the truth. He said, yes, I did, but I didn't tell you when. The date wasn't specified, was it? So now they had a written guarantee. So in their society, they wouldn't go back on that. So that's a win. Now, when we talk about the Muslim who flees doesn't have to be returned and then not the other way, which seems totally unfair, it actually makes a lot of sense because think about this. If you are living in the city of the Prophet ﷺ amongst the companions and you want to leave and go to Mecca away from that, we don't really need you anyway. What is the point? You don't want somebody like that on your side. So what if they don't come back? On the other hand, if a Muslim tries to come to Medina, they had to be returned. And that seems unfair, but it's not unfair because what happened is that because of the peace, they're allowed to practice their Islam openly. And when people were able to see the beauty of Islam, then they started to accept it. So it was not a failure at all. This was from the far side of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What else? When you make a treaty with the Prophet, you've recognized that he has some sort of leadership position, have you not? You've recognized Medina as a city, which is, it's not just a place that we're just at war with or we need to take out. We recognize the legitimacy of the Prophet ﷺ as a leader, and we recognize the legitimacy of Medina as a capital city for the Muslims. But it didn't seem like that when it first happened. So what appears to be a failure really wasn't. So it's really an attitude about how to approach difficulties that we encounter, which is going to make the difference. And that's why I urge us to break the failure cycle. This is one of my favorite verses. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah never changes the condition of a people until they change the condition within themselves. And a lot of times we want to do what? We want to blame other people for our failures. Look, if you don't get up for Fajr regularly, Donald Trump has nothing to do with that. The alt-right has nothing to do with the politics in our masjids. Absolutely nothing. And I'm not denying or living in like this fantasy land. I understand there are issues. But the majority of our problems are related to our own conditions. We complain about the conditions outside for our kids. What's happening in the house? If you throw a screen in front of your kid, and by the way, because I do a lot of research on this, screens for children, it's digital heroin. That's what it is. That's what it is. It has the same, if you look at the brain scans of children who've been given electronic devices, it looks like a heroin addict or a cocaine addict. And this is why Steve Jobs, who invented the iPhone, his kids didn't have iPads. And this is why if you go to Silicon Valley, they go to Waldorf schools, which don't have any tech in them. They have sewing, and they play with mud. And these are executives of Google and Yahoo and all these top companies because they know the damage that they cause. So by us letting it into our house, who are you going to blame about that? That's all us right there. So we need to break that failure cycle and stop outsourcing the issues. The issues are within ourselves. That's uncomfortable to deal with. It's uncomfortable to say that or say that, well, we may have an issue, but that's what's going to get us out of that cycle. Now, another thing that we see when it comes to failure is that we often have a fear of it. We don't do something because we're afraid we're going to fail in the first place. So we say, you know what, let me not even try it. Let me do that. Or when something happens, we backtrack, and we backtrack so much that we waste all this other time that was in front of us. So this is why the Prophet ﷺ told us to beware of this word, if. Don't say lo. Don't say, if I had done such and such would have happened. Say instead, قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ كَانَ. That Allah decreed and it happened. Or وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلْ. He did what he was going to do. For if only opens the door to shaitan. Because you just start backtracking. Well, you know what? If I had just studied a little bit harder, then I would have gotten into that other school, and then I would have gotten a better job at that company, and then I would have married a different person, and then I would have this would have happened, and then this person, all of that, it's just a waste of time. It happened. It's bridge under the water. What are you going to do about it now? What is the point of going back and looking at that? Now, we can learn, no doubt. All of the examples I gave you before, they learn from their mistakes. But if they sat there, can you imagine applying to 30 jobs and not getting a single one? You use the lessons that we learn, and then we move on. We don't sit there. Well, you know what? If I had invested in Apple back in the day, I'd be a billionaire. People say dumb things. So what? If I was 6'10", maybe I would be in the NBA. Who cares? It's just a waste of time to go continuously backtrack and use this word, if this happened, if this happened. It's just a shortcut to failure. And mentally it becomes a failure. Now, one of the things about successful people is that they keep being successful. They don't stop. They don't rest. And that's why we see that as we grow in our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we're doing it right, we're not thinking about, the wonderful things that we did before. It's like, that's gone. We hope it's accepted. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We hope it is. But we move on, and we continue to do good deeds, and we continue to grow, rather than getting excited about ourselves. If any industry leaders start relaxing, then you better forget it. They're not going to be leaders anymore. So beware of this. Now, I want to give you guys some homework. Okay, are people leaving now? Okay, they're leaving. I want to give you some homework. Because I'm going to give you a task, and most people, when they hear this task, they're going to say, I can't do it. So already, mentally, they have committed to failure, that there's no chance this is going to happen. Others will say, I've tried it before and I failed, so I'm not going to do it again. But it is a universal task, it is a simple task, and it is something which is very near and dear to the heart of all Muslims, regardless of what language they speak or where they're from, doesn't make any difference. And that task is memorization of the Quran. Here is a chart that shows us how long do we need to memorize the Quran. Now, why should we even care in the first place? Because on the day of judgment, as this hadith says, the person who memorized the Quran will recite and their levels will be raised and they will be in the level of paradise where they stop reciting. So if you memorize the whole book, where are you going to be? In the highest level. This chart here breaks it down. If you were to memorize one verse a day, it would take 17 years, 7 months, and 9 days. One verse. If you did 2, you're looking at less than 9 years. 2 verses. Now, let me give the prerequisite. Prerequisite is that you have to have a teacher and you have to recite properly. That is a prerequisite. But 2 verses a year. And I'm going to tell you this right now. At TDC 19 now? TDC 2028. There's going to be people that attended this, and some of them are going to say, I started to memorize 2 verses a year, and I completed it. And others are going to say, I looked at it and it was too overwhelming. And you know what's going to happen? 17 years, 7 months, and 9 days are going to go by, and nothing is going to be memorized. You can mark it down right now. We have to have the attitude that it's possible. It is possible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up avenues that we cannot imagine when we do this. When I used to go to my teacher to memorize, there was another brother, and he kind of had not showed up for a while. And so when he came back, the teacher asked him, said, where you been? He said, I just kind of got busy and I got tied up with work and, so I couldn't give time to the Quran. He said, if you don't give time to the Quran, that's why you were struggling at work. In other words, your priorities are whacked. If you had continued with the Quran, all that stuff would have been taken care of. But since you left it, that's why you're having those struggles. So don't tell me that this is not possible. Especially with all the technology that we have. I mean, it's very achievable. But the first step is that we have to believe we can do it. And it's not some, miracle thing that we cannot do. Let me leave you with this quote. This is actually a quote which I have hanging in my office from Dale Carnegie. He said, most of the important things in the world have been accomplished by people who have kept on trying when there seemed to be no hope at all. What does that mean? Kept on trying. That means that they failed and they got up and they kept going. And then they failed again. And they got up and they kept going. And then they failed again and they kept going. But they didn't stop. Others quit maybe after the first time or the second time. So inshallah, with this we will see that no matter what we achieve, there's always more to gain. There's always a higher level we can get to. And so by understanding our place here in this dunya, in this world, there is no reason why we cannot have the best in this world and in the next. So we conclude with the dua of the Quran that we all know, but maybe it means a little more now. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Oh Allah, give us good in this life and in the next life, and protect us from the hellfire. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad.